friend today. You lost a friend today. So many people in this world, in the world of talk radio, in the world of people who work and watch, in the world of television, people who care about politics, people who like a good debate, people who like to have their minds challenged and expanded, people who are willing to listen to something that maybe they don't start out 100% agreeing with. All of us, all of you, lost a friend today. I say welcome to the Alan Colmes Show. And I have said that quite a few times in the past weeks and couple of months as I have sat in here filling in for my friend Alan Colmes, who, as many of you, most of you perhaps know, has been out fighting illness. And we knew it was serious because certainly nobody like Alan Colmes would take time off unless it was serious. And today we get news this morning, just as many folks were getting off to work. Lots of his friends and colleagues around the world of Fox Radio and Fox Television getting into the office. Be hearing the news that Alan Colmes today died at age 66. Truly one of the pioneers of this medium, one of the people who helped invent what is today the town square of the American conversation, some of it on the radio, some of it on television, some of it online. Alan Colmes, with his fingers and his humor and his questions and his prodding and his debates all over all parts of it, really there from the modern inception of these mediums. And always doing it with intelligence, with good humor, with a sense of decency that is both rare in these businesses and cut across all imaginable political and cultural lines. As the tributes poured in, and we're going to have many of them for you in this special 3-hour version of the Alan Colmes Show. Quite a number of Alan's friends are going to join us either in person here in the studio or on the phone from across America. People who knew Alan, who loved Alan, like many of you, who got to know Alan slowly, both listening to him on television and on the radio, in many cases getting to know him as a colleague and as a friend. They wanted to be part of this hour and the 2 hours to come, and we will make time for many, many of them. As importantly, maybe more importantly, we will make time for you in this special edition of the Alan Colmes Show. Alan always said that what made this show so special and gave him the energy and the enthusiasm to keep coming in here night after night for the past almost precisely 14 years in this show and literally in decades in previous incarnations of this show on other radio stations as he wound his way into such an important broadcasting career. The fact that this was a dialogue, not a monologue, is truly what gave him the energy to do it. The idea that there were people on the other end of this microphone listening, thinking, learning, and participating in ways that whatever the technology of the moment, and that technology changed a lot over the years that Alan Colmes operated in these mediums. In the early days, he would joke, maybe you could write a letter to the station. And then people got on the phone and began talking, and guests would come in. And then as the years went on, it evolved into email and to posts on Twitter and to text messages and to whatever the means of communication did not really matter in the end. It was one man and someone on the other end listening, thinking, talking, learning, and connecting in a way that this medium is uniquely suited for. Nothing more intimate than someone talking on the radio, particularly when there's the opportunity to talk back. So as the day rolled on and we went from being concerned about our friend and wanting to do what we could to help, I, sitting in this chair quite a few nights in recent weeks, other of Alan's friends happily honored to do the same. The crew around here, and we will, as this journey goes on into the evening, you will hear from several of them directly. The people who made this show happen. Some of them you know, some of them you may not, but all of them important to Alan and important to the art and the creativity of producing a show like this and making it as powerful and as important to the lives of those who are touched by it every evening. Will be in here speaking for themselves. But so striking to me that as these tributes have poured in from across the political spectrum, right? Not just fellow liberals, and Alan, always a proud liberal, always sticking to the values and the beliefs that animated him, that he felt so strongly about, that were laid out in his Twitter posts and in the Liberal Land website and at Allen.com and all of the other platforms that he operated on, values that went all the way back to his childhood in the New York area, caring about other people, believing that it was important even for those, maybe even especially for those who had been blessed in life, to lend a helping hand to those who needed it most, to give voice to the voiceless, to stand up for people who were struggling, were in difficult circumstances. Those of us who got to know Alan knew that it was not only something that he said on the radio and on television, not just a political view that he held to and argued sometimes so passionately with the conservatives that he treasured as friends as much as he was disagreeing with the views that they were expressing, feeling like, no, that's not the best of America. That's not who we are as decent people. That's not what we were put on this earth to do. Alan, always able to transcend and to use the gifts that he was given, his mind and his heart and especially his humor, able to disagree with people and still count them as his friends. And as the tributes have come in tonight, and we will read many of them to you. Frankly, some of them will bring tears to your eyes as they have to mine. It's so striking that people, even those who had such different political outlooks to a person, could think of this guy as, you know what? He was my friend. He was a class act. He was someone that if you needed something would step forward. I know myself. I mean, Alan was a few years older than I was as I came into these businesses, a print guy first. Then kicking around talk radio, and Alan was just always a terrific mentor, someone who had me on first as a guest, then as a guest host, someone who we could spar with. We agreed about a lot of things. We didn't agree about some things. We had I guess a shared worldview. We had the experience, particularly in the early years of the Fox News Channel. Alan, the most prominent liberal on the network, I among some of the others, learning how do you operate in a world where so many of the people disagree with you, not just the people that you work with, many of the listeners. And it always struck me, first walking around with Alan in the streets of New York and having people come up, recognize him, often from the Hannity and Colmes television show. And they almost always said the same thing at first. They would come up and they were nice. They were almost always pleasant. And they would say, Alan Colmes, and he would stop and he would smile and he'd be friendly. And they would say, you know what? I don't agree with a single thing that you say. And he would stand and he would nod and he would wait for what he knew was coming next. And they would say, but you know what? I can't help but like you. I can't help but think you're a decent guy. Sometimes you drive me crazy. Sometimes you say things that make me so mad. Sometimes I want to reach into that television set. I just want to shake you, man. But I can't help but like you. I can't help but see that even when you're saying things that are hard for me to hear, that they come from such a place of decency, from such a place of humanity, that you're someone that I can connect with as a human being, who I know is talking from his heart, believes in the values that he is expressing, clings to things that are important in life, loves his country, and genuinely cares about making this nation that we live in together a better and a more decent place. So this is a special honor tonight. It's a special burden. I want to make sure that it is befitting of the talent and love that so many of us felt for Alan Colmes. I want to invite you to join the conversation. You know the number, right? 877-367-2526. That's 877-4-ALAN. We'll be repeating that quite a few more times tonight. Get in on the conversation. We will have a series of friends, colleagues, debating partners, hangout buddies of Colmes. But I do want to be sure that those who in many ways meant as much to him as any of those famous names he's going to be hearing from tonight, and that is you, a part of this conversation. So join us with your reminiscences of Alan, any last debating points you want to make, any memories of special moments on this program or on television, any of the other things that Alan did. We have 3 hours to do this. We're going to send our friend out right. One last time, it's the Alan Colmes Show.
This is Kreskin, and I'm tuning in on your thoughts. You have an irresistible urge to listen to the Alan Colmes Show.
The Alan Colmes Show. It's hard to say. It's hard to say. I've been saying it a lot in the last few weeks, as has our first guest this evening, Juan Williams, Fox News contributor, old friend of mine, print guy initially, longtime radio, TV talker, a longtime friend of Alan Colmes, and one of the folks who has kept this seat warm in the time that Alan was struggling in the past few weeks. Thanks so much for coming by.
Ellis, you've kept the seat warm and done an honor to Alan, and it's great that you, his very close friend, are here tonight. You know, I've often thought Alan Colmes was such a funny guy. I'm not sure the audience understands that to know Alan was to laugh. And not just laugh because you think Alan said something silly. Alan was a professional comedian at one point in his life. I mean, he was a hit on the New York comedy circuit before he got into radio, and then did a series of very successful radio shows because of his tremendous humor. And I think you can't help but think that helped him a lot, being the liberal voice at Fox News, right? It's part of what was Alan's charm and why people took to him. And you in the first segment were describing people coming up to Alan, much as they come up to you and me and say, hey, you work at Fox. And then they say, hey, but I don't agree with anything you say.
They want to register that. They always want to register that, don't they?
But the thing about Alan was a charmer and a funny guy, and you had the sense, almost like tonight we're having an Irish wake, Alice? Mm-hmm. Because, everybody's going to come and they're going to put the bottle down and we're going to tell funny stories about our friend who sadly died today.
So his job on Fox, right, was often to express views that some of the other folks of the network and certainly many of the viewers did not agree with. Now, you had that role. To some extent, I have had that role. Talk about his technique in appearing in front of an audience, many of whose members were not inclined to agree with him. That's a special challenge, isn't it?
That's what I was saying about Alan's charm and the capacity to bring in a different point of view that at first caught you off guard maybe because it made you laugh, Ellis. It gave you a sense of, hey, wait a second. Alan's in on this. He understands the joke, you know. And Alan, remember, it's not just the audience. Alan is dealing with other strong personalities who are coming from the conservative point of view. He's dealing with Sean Hannity. And he's making Hannity laugh, and he's making the audience like him, even though it might be clear, especially to the far left, who would say, gee, it looks like Hannity's running over Alan Colmes. Everything is, you know, in Hannity's favor. And you think, well, yeah, do you know that it's called Hannity and Colmes? It's not called Colmes and Hannity. And you know Alan is there. I mean, the show was designed for Sean Hannity and a liberal co-host. And then guess what? Alan comes in and becomes a co-partner. But I think people sometimes don't understand. Alan played that role so well.
But now, if he had just gone there and yelled, what would have happened?
Well, I think it would have been catastrophic. I think because then it would have been, you know, like fireworks, not of a entertaining kind, but I think it would have been off-putting not only to conservatives, but to liberals who were tuning in to hear that Alan was challenging whatever was the conservative orthodoxy of the day. And Alan just knew how to play it so that he wasn't trying to shout at equal volume. We were talking in the break here, Ellison. You were saying to me if they had shouted at the same level, it would have just been a cacophony of nonsense. I mean, everybody would have said, what is that? But guess what? Alan had the sense. And I think it comes from an inner sense of the performer to understand how to play off someone else and put on a great show. And that's what he did.
You know, I've had comics tell me that the real skill of comedy is not talking, it's listening. It's playing off of something else that someone does. Was that part of what this was about, do you think?
I think so. And also I think it was silence, so that at times he would let, be it Sean Hannity or whoever else, go on and just look at him. I mean, you know, and I think that, you know, it's like things that are contradictory are often funny. And so, you know, he would just simply point out the flaws in the argument, oftentimes in sotto voce, you know, so that people would say, wait a second, what did Alan just say? And then he would point that finger and Alan would go at it. But, you know, go at it in such a way that it made an impression on people who were not predisposed to agree with him.
Yeah. You know, he was the first, in a way, wasn't he, in that role?
At Fox.
You came along,
well,
I came along, Beckel came along, other people did over time, but he kind of did beat that path. That must have been tough.
I think it was very tough for Alan. Remember, I said to you, Alan had successful commercial radio shows around the country before he came to Fox. Fox was interested in Alan, and you got to go back to the kind of people that were brought into Fox. A lot of them were people who not only were radio talk show hosts and transferring that radio talk show skill to the television screen, but in the case of Alan Colmes, people who were performers, proven comedians. And so Alan brought that sense of Broadway and the stage.
Showbiz.
Yeah,
a little showbiz.
Exactly, to the news talk business.
All right. Juan Williams, listen, it is a sad day, but the only way to do it is to spend it with friends and
That's
friends of Alan's who are remembering our buddy and inviting folks in. 877-367-2526. Godspeed, my friend. It's a sad but very special night here, honoring our friend Alan Colmes, who passed away today after battling illness for the past couple of months. He was in and out of this chair. Oh, gosh, you know how he hated not being here. Over the years, Alan, who did not take a lot of vacation, rarely took a day off, just did not like not being in this chair with you. 877-367-2526. I noticed that several of our regular callers checking in, eager to express their own feelings. I would invite you to do the same, whether you're a long-timer or someone who has has listened quietly over the years, we would welcome you to join our conversation this evening, hearing from some of Alan's high-profile friends and colleagues, but maybe even more importantly from you. Let's go out to Long Island, New York. Huntington, David joining us now. Hi, David. Welcome to our special tribute this evening.
Yeah, good evening, Alice. I learned of this via Twitter. Someone tweeted me and said, "Oh, did you hear the news about Alan?" And I'll be honest, I knew when I read that tweet that he had passed away, because I knew that Alan would never have stayed away from this program that he loved so much if he hadn't been very ill. And sorry, I'm breaking up a little bit.
That's all right.
Because
that's okay.
A lot of people don't know this. I started calling this program when I was going blind. I still had vision. But as I gradually lost almost all my vision, I retreated into myself, and I stopped going out and talking to people. And this program was the only outlet that I had, and I called pretty much every night ever since late 2013. And I agreed with Alan pretty much on almost everything, but there were times when we disagreed, and it never caused any discord. We always had civil conversations, and I'm going to miss him a lot. I really am. And a lot of people think, it's just a radio program, but it's not. This is like a family. Many of us who are listening right now are regular callers and regular listeners. And, I can only speak for myself, but I am literally heartbroken today. And I'm not normally an overly emotional person, but, sometimes you encounter people, and I've never met Alan personally, but they touch your life, and you realize that there are so few really quality people in this world, and he was most certainly one of those.
Now, Dave, if I had to say, it seemed to me that he had something, and I'm not sure that I can articulate it right. Maybe you can try. Some sort of humanity wrapped up in all those strong political views that shone through in a way that even if you didn't agree with the guy politically, you could see that humanity in there.
Right. That's exactly right, Ellis. When I called this program from the very beginning, I knew I was talking literally to another person and not someone who was just doing their job. I got to talk about things that I literally hadn't even spoken to family members about during the course of this program.
Yeah.
And, Alan always defended me from other callers who sometimes could be vicious. And I always will appreciate him for that.
Well,
and if I could say one last thing,
yeah,
please.
Sure.
One of the things, because I've been reading a great deal about this today, one of the things that I think is underappreciated about Alan is that he had a great talent for doing interviews, and I don't mean political ones. I mean with like celebrities or people that had like obscure or odd things in their life. He was just able to touch people on a human level, and I think that's a talent that is sorely missing from TV and radio today. Wow. And I know Alan loved radio, which is in danger, it seems. And I just hope that this show continues and that those of us that loved Alan will still be able to enjoy this program.
Beautifully said. I do appreciate that. I know you're not alone in being touched that way. It's you and other of our longtime listeners and callers who really make all of that work. It wouldn't have worked without you, and I do appreciate your participation. And I know Alan Colmes does as well. Dave joining us from Long Island. Oh, look, Joel Morton, longtime producer of the Alan Colmes Show, checking in. Joel, my condolences to you as well. You guys worked together for, my God, it must have been 10 years.
It was 10 years in radio, but before that, I was fortunate enough to meet Alan. I was the very first intern on Hannity and Colmes.
Oh my God!
When the TV show was just a couple months old, and I was relatively new to New York, where he had already made a big stamp in radio, and so I didn't really know too much about him. But the first thing that struck me about him was just how unbelievably funny he was. And it's something that, years later, when I had the opportunity to come work with him in radio, that was something that I wanted to really be a part of and have the chance to listen to on a daily basis and get paid for it was really how hilarious he was. But then there was just so much more than that. The humanity that the last caller was talking about was there. He he was a true broadcaster in an era where broadcasters, are underappreciated.
Now, Joel Morton, I always had the impression when I watched you two interact that you were very much on the same plane. You were quick to fly back with some snappy comment to him, and he would have some riposte of some sort. Did you feel like you were dealing with a friend and a colleague? It was more than a boss relationship, wasn't it?
Oh, no. I used to always tell him that I was his boss as far as I was concerned. And, he kind of appreciated that. But, we got to the point where we could really read each other's minds. And, one of the sentences that he probably said to me the most out of all the years we knew each other was, "I know what you're going to say." And usually when he thought that, he was right. It was, he had a sensitivity that, he was a very human person. He was a very real person. He wasn't, a lot of times when we'd be out at an event or walking on the street, people would walk up to him like you were talking about earlier, and they'd be like surprised and a little bit starstruck. It's Alan Colmes.
Right.
And, he was the most regular human being, out there. And really all he wanted, he wasn't a celebrity, and he wasn't anything else other than just a wonderful person who wanted to do radio more than anything else in life.
Mm-hmm. I always had the feeling, and you would have a special insight about this, but that radio in many ways was his first love. Now, he probably got more fame from television, but I always felt like his real natural calling was sitting in a darkened studio talking into a microphone.
Absolutely. I mean, and he as a child, if you know Alan well enough, you know that as a child he fantasized about doing radio and would do mock radio shows while other kids were playing with their toys. And, he had this vision in his head of being a radio personality from a very, very young age. And, TV came along and it did a lot of things for him, but radio was always the first love. And radio was always what I think, he enjoyed more than anything else. And I think it's really where his talents shine more than anything else. And, on television, he had a TV show which was something special for him for many years. But it never really was quite the place where he shined quite as much as he really did on radio, where he was just so perfect for the medium, and where there was just really nobody else quite like him.
Now, finally, Joel, if there was one thing that you learned about Alan, what made him tick, what motivated him, that even many of his longtime listeners and other friends might not know, what would you share? What's the part of Alan that people would be surprised to know about?
I don't know about surprised, but the guy just... there was a combination between his sensitivity and his humor that kind of drove him, and it drove his interest in people, and it drove his interest in broadcasting and in finding a depth in broadcasting when he would do interviews like none you'd ever heard, but also would find humor. And and it also drove his relationships with other people. We used to always have this running joke between us about how he was a single man in New York City for many years up until he met Jocelyn, and they got married when he was 52. And I always told him, I said, you're my role model. I want to keep on being a single guy in New York City until I get into my 50s, and then I want to marry someone who's way out of my league. And after we knew each other for many years, I actually got engaged, but I didn't wait until my 50s. I was just 39, and I didn't have the chance to tell Alan about it before he heard about it from someone else. And the phone rang, and he said to me, Joel, I've heard you got engaged to be married. And I said, yeah. And he goes, I just really, really want to tell you that, I'm very, very disappointed in you. And it was just kind of this
deadpan, deadpan attitude, right?
It encapsulated the fact that, he called, he cared, but there was a humor there. And it was uniquely Alan.
Joel Morton, a longtime producer of the Alan Colmes Show, longtime friend of Alan, sharing some special insights. Joel, I really do appreciate you making time for us on this tough night.
And thanks so much for being there tonight.
Yeah. Listen, everyone who cares about Alan turning up, including including Sean Hannity, Alan's longtime partner on the television program Hannity and Colmes, a friend from the earliest days of the Fox News Channel, and someone who knows Alan in ways that very few others do. Well, my condolences to you, Sean.
Hey, Ellis. You know what? You were such a big part of our show in the day, and you knew Alan. His radio audience knew Alan. You know what's amazing is for all of Alan's fans that I know that are in mourning tonight and they're upset tonight. He died way too young. You know, I just want them to know he loved going behind a radio microphone. He was a radio guy through and through. He loved television. He loved his audience. Even when people would call up and be mean, you know, he enjoyed every single solitary minute that he was able to share with the people that listen to his show and the great success that it is across the country. And we lost a really special human being today. Ellis, you knew him. I knew him. There was nobody more decent, more kind, more, you know, nicer that you'd ever want to meet. Probably one of the most loved people in the Fox News building. You know, when you have a building filled of egos, sometimes that's not always the case, but he singularly was liked by everybody. And I got to be honest, I was very, very proud to work with Alan and the success that we were able to achieve together. I mean, we started out with no TV experience. Either one of us were scared to death from day one. We were a couple
of radio guys, right, who didn't know anything about television, right?
Listen, I had no idea what I was doing, and here I am 21 years later. Who would have thunk, right? But you know what? We worked hard together to put on the best show possible. You know, we were able to topple in just a few short years, you know, the king of cable news, Larry King, and we were number one in our slot for all these years together. And Alan was such a big part of it. And I know a lot of people, and for example, you've done interviews and you defended me and then got beaten up for saying nice things about me. And what a lot of people never knew is that, okay, we did our show. Alan believed everything he said. I want people to understand that. He believed everything he said. When he wrote in Red, White, and Liberal his book, O.J.'s Innocent, it drove me crazy. But he believed it. And, you know, the good thing is that people remember us from maybe battling politically. We had all our political differences, although we did agree on freedom of speech issues all the time. He was a staunch advocate for the First Amendment. And so we'd come on the air, but when we got off the air, we weren't arguing politics. We were collaborating on how to do the best show we could do to win, and the best show that we could do to serve our audience.
Well, Sean, if there is, let me stop you. If there is a legacy there from those years that you guys spent on television, it has got to be the notion that people can have passionate and very different views about politics in the world and still have some kind of human connection that, you know, you both recognize each other with respect and with decency and enjoy each other's company. Am I wrong about that?
You know, I understand why you're asking the question, because there's a lack of civility out there now, and the country is as divided as I've ever seen it. And it didn't start with Donald Trump. I would argue probably Barack Obama started a lot of this. And maybe,
you know, Alan would argue with you about that, you know.
Yeah.
So what are you talking about, Sean?
I'll tell you something about Alan. So he left the show after Obama won the election. He goes, I've done my job. I've saved the country. And that drove me crazy, too. And you know what he did? He handed me on air a copy of the Communist Manifesto. I'm like, gee, thanks, Alan.
Well, you know what? Sean, you'll appreciate one other date. The last live airing of this program with Alan Colmes was Inauguration Day of Donald Trump. So I guess he was saying, listen, I gave it my shot. You guys carry it on from here. Sean Hannity, listen, it is great of you to join us on a sad night. I know you lost a friend. I'm so sorry.
Thank you for doing this for Alan tonight. It's such an honor and thank you for including me. But you asked about civility. I'm going to say something. You are one of those people that you and I always got along off air. You know, Alan and I always got along off air. And that we kind of need a little more of that. And I know people will accuse me of being guilty, but off air, I'll get along with anybody. And we lost a very good, decent, honorable human being today. And our hearts at Fox, to be honest, are broken. Everybody's. And I know his fans feel the same way. And believe me, I'm feeling what they're feeling. And please keep his wife, Jocelyn, in your thoughts and prayers. His family, of course, Monica Crowley, our dear friend, his manager, Rory. He had such a close group of really great friends and people and family around him, and they're all devastated today. Right. And let's pray for them today.
Sean Kennedy, who has a unique view of our friend Alan Colmes. Don't you go anywhere, my friends. It's the Alan Colmes Show.
Hi, this is Elizabeth Warren, and you're listening to the Alan Colmes Show.
It's Ellis Hennigan with you on this special edition of the Alan Colmes Show, commemorating the life of our friend Alan Colmes. So many of his listeners, friends, colleagues joining our conversation. We invite you to do so as well, making time for plenty of the listeners, the folks for whom Alan did this 3 hours a night, 5 nights a week. Also, we'll be talking as our journey goes along with Colonel David Hunt, with Michael Reagan, Barry Weintraub, who has been one of the folks, along with Juan Williams, who was here earlier, and myself, keeping the flame burning as Alan so bravely battled in his final weeks and months of life. Just a special, a difficult night, but it's so much better having you be part of it. Michael Harrison, someone I'm looking forward to talking to, truly the dean of American Talk Radio, the publisher of Talkers Magazine, who can help us understand just what an impact this one man made on this medium that so many of us love and care about so deeply, and that Alan Colmes really did help to define. No one better than Michael Harrison to describe that. Oh, the judge. We would not be complete without the judge. So many debates over the years between Alan and Judge Andrew Napolitano. So much affection, so much discussion, so much hand-wringing. I know they never got to blows, but let me tell you, they loved each other and debated on into the night. The same Colmes spirit persisting here. I'm Ellis Hennigan. That is amazing. That is the bumper music, the intro music from several years ago. My God, that must have run for those of you who've listened to the program a long time. Recognize that as the music that was really defined the show for, I don't know, 9 or 10 years, up until a couple of years ago. It's funny. You know, those things fade out of your mind. You don't remember them. I have not given that piece of music a second thought until just that second when I heard that's the Clash, right? And God, I'm sorry, I'm getting nostalgic already. It's Ellis Hennigan on this special edition of the Alan Colmes Show. Alan, I assume most of you have heard, passed away this morning after battling illness for the past few months. He had last appeared behind this microphone on Inauguration Day, January 20. I guess letting us take it from here. Thanks, Alan. But still remaining very involved, tweeting and sending over emails and guest suggestions and wanting to know what the heck is going on with Colonel David Hunt. Where is that guy? What's going on with Hunt? Many of Alan's friends showing up to help us remember our friend, including my old pal David Hunt. How are you, sir?
Hi, good evening. Tough time.
I know. Thank you for reporting. Now, you guys been on television together, on radio together, became friends over the years. But you know what? It's the human being more than the political speaker that lingers, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Alan refused to be to be identified just as a TV personality. He was as you know, he was brilliant. He was a man, one of the few man full of grace. He was a great intellect. He was, professional comedian, and one of the great guys I ever met. I mean, in a time, in my lifetime, it's become savage, based on your political leanings. It doesn't matter. It hasn't mattered. It just, whatever side of the aisle you're on defines you. And Alan refused to let that be. I mean, his arguments were pure. He was, as you know, a pacifist. But he would argue very intellectually, very caringly, never attacking personally, and then laugh about it.
But here's what's amazing to me.
Man.
Here's what's amazing to me, David, is that you're right. He had strong views, kind of moral, and yet he could become friends and have an intellectual meeting of the minds, really, with a guy who was in many ways a quintessential American military man, and you all both could respect each other.
Oh yeah, but if you, as you know, I mean, if you spend 5 minutes with Alan, you're so immediately impressed with his kindness, his heart, his grace, intellect, and his commitment. I mean, and he was like that with everyone. He's one, this world is, it's a great place, but you can't afford to lose the Alan Colmes of the world. I mean, he was just the quintessential, a terrible word, the very definition of a good man. And I feel so bad for his family and his wife. We all lost a friend and a coworker, but the people who lived with Alan knew him. I mean, this is really going to hurt. I mean, I also don't believe we fully appreciate what we've lost. I mean, that kind of voice in a discussion is invaluable, as you know. A man who stands up for what he believes in, but that's it. It's not the personal attack, the hatred. It's, I believe in this, and this is why I believe in it. What do you believe in? I couldn't help but admire that, and it was a pleasure to know. I'd do anything for the guy. I just respected the man, and he was a star in his own right, a very good writer, as you know, comedian, television and radio personality, but that quickly dissipated into a good man. He never played that. He was very humble. This hurts. I mean, we lost Brenda Butner, and now Alan Colmes. They're two really great people. I mean, it's just a tough one. It's a tough time.
Talking with Colonel David Hunt, Fox News military contributor, a man who, had a different background from Alan's, different life experiences from Alan's, some political overlap, I know, but some strong differences as well. I remember, David, and I don't know whether your memory is clear on this, but in the early era of the Iraq War, right, as we were trying to figure out what was what there, where did American values point us? Was this something that we could win? Could we trust our allies? Who were our real enemies? I remember you guys both on the radio and on television. I had the impression that both of you were trying to figure this out by bouncing off of each other. Was I wrong about that?
No, because I think yes, I think that is true. I mean, Alan's intellect was engaging. It wasn't a Bush hatred, a war hate, a passive. See, in my limited intellect, a pacifist is not somebody who hates war. He can't not hate it. He prefers, he's committed to a peaceful solution, a pacifist. They're not, and that's Alan. So that here we are discussing something that he truly doesn't believe in, but in an intellectual way. And he did it without the Bush derangement syndrome or the bad-mouthing soldiers. It was a respectful argument, and I tried, and probably unsuccessfully, to meet that argument in the same way. So, to not be the bellicose airborne Ranger Special Forces jerk about it, but to try to talk to a man, a guy, about something that was vexing to all of us. That was first 5 years for sure. We were losing that thing. We kept. Anyway, that was a very, very, very tough time for the country. And Alan was on with, as you know, Hannity, And there was a real divide. The difference is that Alan always came away from the table with a great heart, without savage the other person. And that was not always the case in the arguments that you would hear. I know you've known him a long time. I was only lucky to know him about 17 years, but I cherished the moments with him. He was just a good man. I mean, and like I said to everybody. That's. And now I think people. This is a big hole in people's lives. I mean, Alan Colmes was a big deal. And he left a solid, just a graceful impression on all of us. I'm going to miss him.
Yeah. Well, let me say this to you, David Hunt. One of the reasons that I think that he enjoyed those encounters with you over the years was that you, too, came at this with an open mind. And even though you're a lifelong military guy, a gung-ho soldier, someone who believed in the ability of the American military to do good in the world, you, too, were always open to say, well, you know what? Maybe we made a mistake here. Maybe we can't believe that. Maybe we need to rethink that strategy. Maybe even though, yes, this is an army, we do need to have intelligent people at the top of it making sound and sober decisions. And I don't think I'm wrong when I say maybe that's really what the two of you guys found in common.
No, I have no doubt. I mean, I think it's a great observation. He was always on point. Mm-hmm. He never left his argument. And if whatever you said, he intellectually and aggressively countered, but it wasn't an attack on you.
On you. Wasn't I hate you. It wasn't I hate you, right.
It wasn't even an attack on the subject. He said, okay, but here's 15 points on my Alan Colmes side. I mean, it was, and he went on, and at the end of it, you go, that was a hell of a discussion. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people wanted rocks to be thrown, and a lot of people did it. Yeah. But not Colmes. He never went there.
Colonel David Hunt from Fox News, a longtime Alan Colmes friend, and another open-minded and civil, though passionate debater. Colonel, I do appreciate you spending time with us on such an evening.
Yeah, I'm glad you did this. Thank you for doing that.
No, we all care about it. The tributes pouring in from media friends, from regular folks, from listeners just like you. 877-367-2526, especially for many of those who work closely with Alan over the years.
Brian Kilmeade remembers Alan Colmes.
You know, my first memory of Alan Colmes actually was at a comedy club, and he was debating, believe it or not, Morton Downey Jr. And, of course, he had the left and Morton Downey Jr., who was the precursor to all cable news and everything like that, and the hard right and the hard left. They debated in a comedy club in a live situation. I'm thinking to myself, who's this guy? I hope he can hold himself against another guy who's going to be screaming in his face all day. And you saw the great mix of Alan Colmes. You saw him funny. You saw him insightful. You saw him willing to engage the combativeness. But the guy always had a great sense of humor. And that's pretty much what you got with his show. When I saw him on television with Hannity and Colmes, I knew he could handle himself. I remember listening to him on WNBC, and you could hear how funny he could be and how political he also could be. And if you were ever going to debate something and you were on the other side, man, you got to be prepared. So I think I'm always going to remember what a nice guy Alan Colmes was, how great he was in television and radio, and how versatile he was, that sense of humor and the willing to fight for a cause. And he really was a dominant figure in broadcasting, and he will be missed.
Hi, this is Frankie Valli, and you're listening to The Alan Colmes Show.
On Inauguration Day, just a little bit more than a month ago, Donald Trump and his family, before the swearing in at noon, as his tradition, attended church services just a short walk from the White House, there to give some final words of spiritual guidance, delivering the sermon that day. Senior Pastor Robert Jeffress, who comes from the First Baptist Church in Dallas. They are preaching in Washington, D.C., giving some all-important words to the man about to become our president. Some of you may know, who have listened to this program before and have followed Alan, will know that he and Pastor Jeffress are good friends over the years, people who have worked in media and developed a good personal rapport. That was Alan's last show that day, Inauguration Day, and one of his guests that evening, as one of our guests tonight, Senior Pastor Robert Jeffress. Robert, so good of you to join us on this difficult evening for all of Alan's friends.
Well, I'm honored to be there. I tell you, I've been in shock all day and grieving over the loss of Alan. He was really a good friend, one of my best friends there at Fox. And, a lot of people don't know this, but he was a strong advocate for my becoming a contributor there at Fox, even though he and I had just about opposite views on every topic. But, that's one of the many things I loved about Alan. He was an honest liberal. I mean, a lot of people who are progressives say they believe in the free expression of all ideas when they mean they believe in the expression of all the ideas they agree with. But that wasn't Alan. He didn't believe in the suppression of truth. He believed in the expression of all points of view, and he was always fair with me, and I'll always be grateful to him for his friendship.
So what do you think that was? So much of our culture today, so much of our politics encourages us to become tribal, to just hang around and listen to people who we already agree with. What is it that allowed him and allowed this program really to cut across those lines, do you think?
Well, what I think came through, even when he was going hard after a caller or a guest like me, and I'm telling you, he was respectful, but he was hard. I mean, he came at you with both barrels blazing. But you know what? He genuinely liked people, and I think that came through. I think it came through that microphone to the millions of people who listened to him. I know, anytime I had a guest there in the studio with me, whether it was a friend or my wife or somebody who was visiting, he always showed an interest in them. And I think the other thing about Alan was he was genuinely inquisitive. I mean, the lazy thing to do is just villainize and write off people you don't agree with, but he really was curious. I mean, we had many discussions about faith. He was of the Jewish faith, but he really wanted to know what Christians believe and always gave me an opportunity to share the gospel of Christ on his program, and I'm always appreciative of that.
Well, one of the interesting things about Alan, and I know he has spoken with his listeners about this, so I don't think we're revealing any secrets that he did not choose to reveal on his own. But you're right. As he grew up in a Jewish family and worshipped in that way, but as the years went on, and he met his wife Jocelyn, and she came from a Christian family, and he began often attending services with her at St. Joseph's Catholic Church in Greenwich Village in New York, and got married there, and I think really did feel like he benefited a lot from that, opened his heart and his mind to it, and I think came to the view that a lot of faiths have a lot of things to offer.
Yeah, well, I'm telling you, of course, he would joke by going to church with Jocelyn and going to synagogue. He was covering all of his bases.
You never know, right? You never know.
But I think he was open to the message of the gospel. Uh-huh. And again, I'll tell you one quick interesting thing that happened there in the studio.
Please.
One night, the Benham brothers were booked on to talk to Alan, and I was going to follow them. So after they finished, and I was going into the studio, they were still in there. We were standing around talking, and one of the Benham brothers said, "Alan, since Pastor Jeffress is here, could we pray for you right now?" And we got in a circle and we prayed for Alan, and instead of being put off by it or offended by it, he was gracious and genuinely said he appreciated somebody praying for him. And I just thought that said a lot about Alan.
You know what? He was probably happy to have the prayers from each of you, would be my guess, right? That is so funny. Well, listen, here's my hope, and I'll bet you it's one that you share, that somehow or another, as folks reflect a little bit on the life and the career of Alan Colmes, that maybe there's a message for all of us, that even those that we disagree with, even those who come from different faith perspectives, different political perspectives, that we can recognize our shared humanity, open our minds and our hearts a little bit, and maybe even learn something from each other. Is that too much to hope for?
No, it's not too much. And even though we can disagree with one another, that doesn't mean we have to hate one another. And the one thing about Alan Colmes is there was no hate in his heart. And his departure has left a giant hole, I know, in my heart and the hearts of the Fox family and his millions of listeners.
Senior Pastor Robert Jeffries, you can understand why it is that they became pals over the years. Listen, it is so kind of you to spend some time with us on this evening.
I'm honored to be a part of it. Thank you.
You see what I mean? You see what I mean? We get the people who know Alan well, right? Not just someone who had some hit-and-run political debate on television, but people who became into that next level of closeness. And increasingly, right, their themes we're beginning to hear. Are you noticing that? Not just passionate beliefs, and people have a variety of passionate beliefs. Not just different life experiences. What could be more different than the experience of a radio and television talking head in New York, or the senior pastor of a megachurch, 13,000 members in Dallas, Texas? Or a man from the military like Colonel David Hunt, who is soon going to be hearing from Michael Reagan, son of Ronald Reagan. My goodness, could you imagine life experiences and political attitudes any more diverse from those of Alan Colmes? And yet cutting through those beliefs and those life experiences, some kind of shared humanity that allowed those people not just to understand each other, but to become genuine human friends. I love that scene of the Reverend and the television stars standing in a television studio, praying over the soul of a man born Jewish, attending Catholic services with his new wife, plucking things from all faith traditions and saying he wanted to cover his bets because you never really know which is the one that matters. Celebrating the life of Alan Colmes. So happy to have you along for this. Ellis Hennigan in for Alan. It's Ellis Hennigan with you on this difficult, yes, a little difficult night on the Alan Colmes Show. Alan Colmes, as most of you know by now, passed away this morning after a months-long battle with illness. His last appearance in this chair on Inauguration Day, and in the week since, a number of us, including me, honored to be doing it. We're in here with you, keeping the Colmes tradition alive. Talk across the spectrum, all opinions welcome. Passionate debate, but not one of those radio shows where everybody agrees with each other. Part of the fun of the Alan Colmes Show always was that diversity of views. I got to share with you one thing. Sitting in this chair in the last weeks, as well as the times over the years that I did have the chance to fill in here, you'd always hear from Alan, right? He could be on one of his rare vacations. He and Jocelyn might even be off in the Caribbean somewhere, but he was still tweeting. He was sending story ideas. He had guest suggestions. Some tweet on some issue that was in the news. I got to tell you, this is going to sound weird, but I feel like I should share with you. I have literally, over the past hour or so that we have been together this evening, I've been checking my Twitter, and there is something in the back of my mind that is expecting to see an @Alan Colmes tweet in there. It's strange. It's strange. Among those who had developed a genuine friendship, more than that of pundit to pundit or talking head to talking head, Alan and Michael Reagan, conservative activist, author, son of President Ronald Reagan, and genuine Alan friend joining us now. Michael, thank you so much for making time for us on what's a tough night for all of Alan Colmes' friends.
Oh, it's tough. I actually picked up the phone about a week and a half ago to call and check in with him, as I have been doing. I think a lot of people know that, or maybe they don't know it, as I checked in on a regular basis with him for, many years. We used to talk to each other earlier, on Thanksgiving and Christmas, I would call him or he would call me. Did that every Christmas since we met. And I think we got many years ago at a talk radio convention, and the first things I heard from his mouth is he was just saying nasty things about my father. And so I just sat down and I said, wait a minute. And he said, oh my God, it's Michael Reagan. And we started a friendship that just has lasted for absolutely forever. And I was blessed to really have him as a friend.
And part of people like both of you guys is you could appreciate the differences, right? You didn't hide your view of the world, I'm certain, and I'll bet you Alan never hid his.
Well, I think what Alan had and what Alan brought to the table, and hopefully I brought some too, is we had respect for each other. You had your opinion, I had my opinion. We didn't have to yell and we didn't have to scream. We could sit there and actually talk about the issue and try to find somewhere where we could come together and move forward towards the betterment for everybody. But I got to tell you, I was really amazed. Years ago, I had done the Handy and Colmes, and I got home and my phone rang, and it was my mother, Jane Wyman, and she said, "Oh, Michael, I saw you in Handy and Colmes tonight." I said, "You watch Hannity and Colmes?" She says, "Oh, I watch it every night at 6 o'clock." I said, "Mom, you watch Hannity and Colmes?" She said, "Yes." She says, "Who's that guy with the glasses? He doesn't really think right." I said, "Well, by the way, he's a very good friend of mine, but you need to talk to him. He doesn't think correctly." And I said to my mom again, "You actually watch Hannity and Colmes?" I never knew she was conservative until she started telling me she watched Hannity and Colmes. And I told
he would love that story. He would love that story. I know.
Yeah.
So Michael, how do we get? And it's one of the themes that has been recurring on this special edition of the Colmes Show. How do we get people in this country, do you think, to take that kind of attitude? And you've always had it. I mean, you and I have had debates on television and on radio over the years, and I don't feel like there's ever been any rancor between us. I mean, I think I kind of know where you're coming from, and you kind of know where I'm coming from, and we have a decency, I think, between us. But I think that has gotten so rare today. You risk in politics that your friends think you're somehow a traitor or you're not a true believer if you're trucking with the enemy. How do we get away from that?
It really is. There's the dignity, the respect has kind of gone, by the wayside. I said to somebody the other day I was buying something at a grocery store and they were upset and mad, and they happened to ask me about Fox. Did you see Sean Hannity? And I said, no, I really didn't. And I said, let me tell you, if you want to have a great day, don't listen to talk radio, don't watch cable news, and read the comments. You'll have a great day. I said, because what happens is people watch Fox to be upset and mad at the left. People watch CNN and MSNBC to be mad and upset at the right. And what happens is everybody's mad and upset. Nobody sits down anymore and discusses it and finds that common ground. My father had to do it with Tip O'Neill. I mean, we got the largest tax break in American history signed in 1981, August 13th, at my dad's ranch. And it had to be put forward by Tip O'Neill, who was the leader of the House of Representatives. How did that happen? It happened because they found a way to come together to move forward. And we don't do that anymore because people are fearful if indeed they find common ground with the enemy, then their constituency will walk, in fact, absolutely away from them. And that's sad.
Yeah. Well, I know that you were asked so much as the new administration came in, well, how does the new guy compare to your dad and how are they different? And, it's funny. I just heard conversation today, someone remembering James Baker, your dad's chief of staff, not at the very beginning, but later in the administration, going up to Capitol Hill and just kind of hanging around. And you would look, some senator would look up and say, oh, look, there's Baker. It's impossible to imagine today that someone in that kind of role, and like you say, that your dad and a congressional leader would sit down and say, okay, what do you need? What do I need? How are we going to get something that's going to take care of everybody here and actually solve a big problem? I don't see much of it. And I love the fact that a relationship like you're saying, the O'Neill-Reagan relationship, or even, frankly, the younger Reagan-Alan Colmes relationship, I got to believe is some kind of model for the future. Is that naive of me?
No, I would certainly hope not. I'm speaking tomorrow night at the Reagan dinner at the CPAC here. And, I was thinking today, I was saying to somebody, I said, imagine Ronald Reagan today, going and giving a speech at Ted Kennedy's, town home in Washington, D.C. to raise the money necessary to begin to build the Kennedy Library. Think about that. Would that happen today in the America we live in?
Unthinkable.
And that's what my father did.
Unthinkable.
Back in 1980s when John, if you will, and Caroline Kennedy came to the Oval Office, made an appointment with my dad, said, something, we want to build a library to honor our father, but every presidential library has something this library will never have. And my dad said, what's that? And they said, a living president.
Wow.
And they said, Mr. President, would you honor us by being the keynote at our uncle's, townhome to be the seed money we're going to need to begin to build that library? And my dad, people ought to go Google it, because it's one of the greatest speeches you will ever hear in mankind that he said, and the things he said about John F. Kennedy. And when my dad's library was, in fact, opened in 1990s, guess who showed up? John Kennedy and Caroline Kennedy to honor my father.
Wow. Wow. Well, you speak eloquently about that.
That doesn't happen today.
It's. I got to tell you, I'm tearing up at the story and shaking my head at the same time and thinking, yeah, good luck in 2017 with that. Michael Reagan reminding us a little bit on what's important, talking about his friend Alan Colmes. So, Michael, really good to hear from you on a night like this.
Just tell everybody, I can think of two friends of mine who have died in my lifetime. One was Peter, and the other one was, of course, my friend who died today, Alan. The only two times I've cried for friends in my life.
God bless you, Michael Reagan. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Feel that, right? You can feel that. Coming from all across the political spectrum, people with different attitudes and different experiences and different backgrounds. You know what shines through? It's the humanity. The tributes just keep pouring in.
John Gibson remembers Alan Colmes.
I'm trying to think now, maybe one or two air people at Fox that, I might have had a drink with or, something outside the building with. But generally speaking, our friendships around the building are in the hallways and in the offices and dropping in on each other and saying hello. And Alan was that kind of guy. I mean, every time I saw him, we stepped aside and talked a little bit about radio and what we were doing and so forth. And even though he liked to give me a hard time on the air, he was a really good friend. And it is just tragic. 66 years old. It's way
too early.
Almost every tradition has a version of this. The Jews call it Shiva. My Irish relatives call it an old-fashioned Irish wake. We're sitting around and remembering our friend Alan Colmes tonight. What's odd is they were doing it on the Alan Colmes Show. I'm so happy to have you here to keep us company. Folks who've known Alan over the years, regular callers, people who have listened, who are only now speaking up, talking about the man they got to know. People so interesting, isn't it? Across political spectrum, Michael Reagan, Colonel David Hunt, Reverend Jeffries down in Dallas. It's just such a diversity of people. Many of you know that Alan's early days in New York on the comedy stage, appearing in comedy clubs. So, of course, over the years, some of his closest friends were some of the city's top comics, funny people, smart people. And when Alan needed a co-host, he often turned to some of these friends, two of whom are joining us now, Barry Weintraub and Giuliano Furlano. Good to hear from you guys on a tough night, Barry and Giuliano. It's sad, but you know what? It's good to be around friends. What do you say?
Hey, how you doing, Ellis? Thanks for having us on.
it is really sad and surprising. And, I mean, he's going to be missed so much by people on both sides of the political spectrum.
You know, Barry, start with me here for a second. You knew him in the day long before most of us who came across Alan in radio and television knew him. As young comics, you guys probably weren't making $1 million a gig, would be my guess. Describe those days a little bit, would you, for us?
You know, I met Alan at the comic strip in New York City. He was already established when I came along. He was always the host on the first show Saturday night, and I was the host on the second show Saturday night for the longest time, and that's where we really became friendly. And over the years, I launched the comedy magazine. He was there. He did a show. He did live shows, Combs in the Club, that Rory produced. I remember he had Captain Lou Albano was a guest in that club. And he told me that, you know, he was doing radio in Connecticut and driving all the way into the city to get spots at the beginning of his career. He worked out at Pips in Brooklyn. As he described it, the crowd was so tough they applauded with their fists.
Which is better than a beer bottle, right? The other approach.
But, you know, Ellis, he was a brilliant comic, dry wit, so smart. And today, so many comics from all across the country have been calling me, texting me, emailing me. And everybody just remembers Alan, loved him, really, you know, no one has a bad word to say. And then I just wish more people knew he was a comic because, you know, the people who called up on the show, when they hear that, sometimes they're surprised, and they shouldn't be because his wit was always evident every night.
So, Juliana, what is it about that path? Is there something about comics and the writing, the listening, the improvisational aspects of it? How do those threads connect together? Because I think a lot of his radio listeners never really understood that.
Well, you know, my experience is that, especially with people who go toward politics and who are interested in politics, they see something from a sort of a different point of view. Every comic is going to offer you their point of view, and hopefully it's something that can make you laugh, make you see something a different way that you haven't already seen it. And obviously those skills work perfectly, especially, you know, as a host on Fox when he was with Hannity and the rest of his career there on Fox. He was able to reach audiences that may or may not agree with him, but still, you know, when I was hosting for him, the callers would call in, and they loved Alan, even if they didn't agree with him. And I think those comedy skills helped to cross that bridge. And I think he's going to be sorely missed, especially in with all the divisive talking that's happening today.
Yeah, Barry, it doesn't surprise you that we've heard from so many people across the political spectrum tonight, does it?
No, you know, because to know Alan is to know a man of integrity. He was so good to so many people. He was so good to me. You know, I mean, the reason I'm talking to you tonight is because we were old friends, and when I got my first radio gig out in San Francisco, I turned to Alan for some advice. And from that moment on, he'd always been a mentor to me in radio. And first I was a guest. I think, Ellis, I met you on a Friday night free-for-all one night with Cornel West back then when the studio was on.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's a rowdy crowd, isn't it?
Yeah.
It was crazy.
I also came to Alan's show from the free-for-all. Boy, that was a wild one.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting.
All-ladies free-for-all.
Yeah, that's right. That was one of Alan's trademarks. And he had a few. I mean, radio graffiti over the years that giving folks one sentence and one sentence only, or bringing in those mixes where you'd have 3 or 4 different people who had no connection to each other at all. No reason ever to even talk with each other. I think he just liked the combustible aspects of that, didn't he?
Yeah. And
well, the one I was on was definitely combustible.
Okay, Juliana, who was it? Who did you have? Come on.
I'm trying to remember. It was a Fox contributor, a blonde woman who's on a lot, and I think Alan and she obviously worked together for a long time, and they had a great rapport, even though pretty much everything he said or everything I said, you know, she shot down. And then there was a sex columnist.
All
so
right.
It was left, me, right, the Fox contributor, you know, and then sex columnist. So it was a snappy discussion.
So let me ask you guys one impression that I have had with the honor of filling in here, sitting, keeping this seat warm. The three of us have all done that. It's of course a very elite and high caliber group that can boast that. When you filled in for Alan, did you have the experience that I did? Finally, the guy takes a day off, right? He didn't like to take a lot of vacation, but he would take it, and then constantly there would be tweets and guest suggestions, be putting stuff up on the website. I got to tell you guys, I'm expecting to hear from him tonight.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah.
We should be so lucky.
Yes.
We should be so lucky.
It was, and I also felt like I was stepping into his home, and I felt like just so grateful to be there because I really think he's done a service to our country. Being a man of integrity and humility even, and funny and witty and standing up for his principles, that's...
And a great broadcaster. A great broadcaster. 40 years. Who survives in this business as long as Alan?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, listen, we're all lucky to have worked at his glow, have learned from him, gotten some help from him, and hopefully we'll be able to carry on some of that tradition. Barry Weintraub, Juliana Furlano, people who Alan cared about, who helped him out when he needed it, and God knows a lot of two-way streets there. Guys, really good to connect with you on a difficult night like this one.
Thanks, Ellis.
Yeah. You can see he's got friends all over the place, all different kinds of people, but all of them are pretty cool, aren't they? Ellis Hennigan in for Alan Colmes. Now, this is a blast from the past. Those of you who followed Alan Colmes' career for a number of years will recognize that music immediately. I think the first time he and I were on the radio, Ellis Hennigan in the chair tonight, back at WEVD on 7th Avenue across from FIT in New York, a smaller signal in New York, I always say. That was the music that brought us into pretty much out of every break. Talking Alan, who, as you know, passed away this morning, gathering his friends, co-workers, callers, passing ships in the night here, sitting shiva for our buddy, an old-fashioned Irish wake. It's tough, but it's better when you have friends around. John Constantino, the current producer of the Alan Colmes Show, in the studio. Now, John, I know, this has got to be something personally difficult for you, a professional challenge. First of all, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing better now that I've heard from all these amazing people. The amount of people I've heard from today is pretty incredible. I've known Alan for 20 years. Wow. It'd be 20 years next month.
Wow.
That theme song actually predates EVD. I brought it to EVD.
Wait a second. You brought it from where?
From United Stations Radio Network in 1997. We just changed it. And then to EVD, I was like, we need to do that. And that came with us. And then when we started here, I said, I really like that too. And when we started here, I brought it here too. So it was really amazing to hear that in a pair of headphones right now.
Boy, so this really is a rare glimpse into the Colmes archives, and nobody better to do it than you.
I've been saying this all day to people that when I first met Alan, the Fox News Channel was on the air 6 months. The first time I saw Hannity and Colmes, I had to see it in person because it was unavailable in New York. I had to sit on set with Sean and Alan and watch the show myself. Otherwise, I never would have seen Hannity and Colmes.
So talk a little bit about the daily rhythm of making this show happen. You don't do it alone. Alan didn't do it alone.
No.
How did the process work? Because I think a lot of people still consider it a mystery.
And that's the thing. The Alan Colmes radio experience, I guess I can call it, over the last 20 years has a cast of thousands. And they work everywhere. And the beauty of social media, and that's another thing I'll get to today, is I heard from everybody. Everybody I ever pushed a button for, everyone I ever made a phone call for, anyone I ever booked a guest through. It was either on social media or in my phone. And it's just been amazing. And it's a little bit of a family that I just heard from everybody. And everybody either had a story or was remembering things. And it's become sort of like it's like branches of a tree Like, they go on and teach people, and they go on and teach people. It's been amazing.
It's so great to be part of it. Was he a hard guy to work for? He's a demanding guy in a way, right?
Demanding, yes, because he said yes and no to every piece of sound you heard on the show. Every soundbite had to be approved. Every single piece of sound you heard, he either said yes or no. It wasn't us saying, oh, this would be great. He had to say yes or no to everything. But the other thing, too, was he would do that about guests. And the cool thing was, and I've told staff members this, and we have Alyssa, who works on the show, has only been on the show 6 weeks, that no matter what idea you have, as long as he thinks it's a cool idea, it's going to get on the air. If you work hard enough on an idea he thinks is going to work, it gets on the show.
Doesn't care where it comes from.
It doesn't where it comes from or who it is, or there are some cases he didn't even know who it was. As long as you gave a pitch and said, I promise you, this will be interesting.
Wow.
It got on the show. And there are very few shows where you have the creative freedom to give a list of guests or ideas and have that many thumbs up.
Well, one of the reasons that he's able to attract talented people, and they would hang around and then go on to other great stuff. I know nothing more important, Alan, than the listeners and the callers, and many people calling in this evening. You feel like taking a couple of calls?
Sure, absolutely.
Let's go to Al in Bangor, a familiar voice here on the Colmes Show. Hiya, Al.
Our friend Alan went out into eternity today. But there was a day when, as a little boy, when he put on his shoes for the first time, when he kissed his mother goodbye and went off to school. And then he goes to college, and you get a job, you get married, you have the success of the world. And it's the same for every man and woman. The clock is wound up at the time of birth, and then it runs down. The final hour strikes. But you missed the point of Alan's life. We wanted to be entertained. He helped us laugh through the pain of the world. He took his own personal pain as a child, and he laughed at it. That's how he dealt with the intense pain that he felt. And do you know why he was always asking the metaphysical question and always talking about eternity? Alice, do you know why?
I'm not sure that I do. Tell me.
He knew he was dying. He knew he was dying. And he bravely carried on, came to work, and that last show on Inauguration Day, one of your callers said, Alan, your voice sounds funny. This is the cruelty in the heart of man. And I hope that the love of Christ, he went to church with his wife every week. I hope the love of Christ did not escape him. I got to go.
Thank you.
There's a couple things that Al said there. One was, that is true. He went to Mass every week with his wife. That was one thing. Two, and the second thing was, he wanted to come here every day to talk to you guys and his guests. That even when things, and everybody kind of heard it on the show, that there were times where his voice was not 100% and he was not feeling 100%. He wanted to be here every day. And the thing was, the last show was Inauguration Day. He wanted to be here the first day because he was prepared, and we had conversations about this, that this was going to be the show. This was the Voice of Opposition show. That's what this was going to be. And it was really super ridiculously important that day one, he was going to be here, and we were just going to hit the ground running.
Right. Even though you knew and he knew that he was suffering, that he was feeling something, that he was going to come into the ring, give every single piece of it that he had. It ran,
and the staff here can back this up. The more we knew what this, what was going to be in the White House once it was president-elect, it just ramped up. And he wanted to be here every day to just take it on.
Yeah.
And being here for that day, that first day, was really important.
Oh, that's an amazing story. You want to go to Mary?
Yeah.
Is this the Mary that I know?
I believe it is.
Mary!
Hello.
How are you doing?
Oh, I'm good. I'm just remembering a brilliant man that I remember, especially through Al's words. My gosh, if you didn't tear up with that, I don't know what would make you tear up.
Mary, for people who don't know, explain that you worked for Alan for how long?
I have my first 4 years in Fox were in Fox News Radio, and Alan really gave me a big start and kind of pushed me towards the right direction as to where I knew I was going. And I kind of owe everything all the successes I've had since then to him. He's a really brilliant man.
Now, one thing that Mary and I bonded over when I first came back here, because this was my second round here, was I told Mary that you may have worked with other people who've only worked with Alan a short amount of time, but one advantage that I will have, that I will help you with, is you will never turn to me and say, why is he like that? When he really wanted a guest, or when he really wanted sound, or when he really wanted something, I said, I will help you. I know what he's like, and we can work as a team. And we've had Josh, and we've had Joe, we've had some people working on the show. Like right. we would get into Alan's office, and we would work it out as a team. It was a really great time.
For me in the beginning, because in the beginning of being on Alan's show, there were a lot of layoffs. It was really just me and him in the beginning, and I was brand new. I had no clue what I was getting myself into, and Alan really guided me into understanding what he wanted, what Fox News Channel wanted, and he really made me understand what the whole journalism business was about. It was mind-blowing and eye-opening all at the same time. And also, it made me understand, okay, this guy's specific, and he was so specific that I was like, if I could make it through here, I could make it through
You could do it anyway. Well, you both of you guys understand, right, that this city and this nation are filled with people who are alumni of Alan Colmes. I got right. I mean, I got the texts and emails from a number of, I was an intern for Alan. Catherine Oliver, who is one of the deputy mayors in the Bloomberg administration, now is one of the top folks at the Bloomberg Foundation, sent me a note. I didn't know this. I know she'd been a reporter in her younger years. She said, I had my first internship with Alan Colmes. And
right.
Oh, that's so nice.
That's exactly it. It's like I wasn't there for nearly as long as other people, but I still got emails from everyone from Gary Johnson to Joel Osteen today, and it was just so refreshing and kind of reaffirming to know that the things that you do on a particular show really pay off and really stick with people. It's nice to know that, especially at such a young age. It's really nice to know that the work you do really pays off, and I understand now why Alan does what he does. It's really nice.
Well, you guys are lucky to have done it, and I certainly know that Alan is expecting you to carry on in brilliant and creative and energetic ways in the years to come. And
to say that when you work for Alan, and when you've worked for Alan as a group, it does continue on, because Mary and I text on the weekends. She hasn't been on the show in a year or two, and we still text on the weekends. We still send each other things. I gave my wife a birthday gift this week that was based on something that Mary had. So this connection, it stays forever. It really does.
John, Mary, and all of you. 877-367-2526. Please feel free to share some of your views.
Tom Sullivan remembers Alan Colmes.
I was on his show a number of times. We enjoyed our debates back and forth, but behind the scenes, I was with him and his wife at a number of social occasions. Just a great guy. Smart as a whip. Smart, so smart. Big lefty, but he had a big heart, and he was smart as could be. So if you're going to debate Alan Colmes, you better bring your A game, because he was going to definitely make it worth your while in his debate tactics. There's only 4 shows here. We all know each other, so it's a sad day for us. Let me just put it that way. And it makes you stop and think about all the fights that we do. We argue with each other about Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton or Mexico or whatever the argument of the day is. And they all seem less important on a day like today, where I'm thinking about my friend and would love to have another discussion with him.
Hi, this is Bill Clinton on the Alan Colmes Show, and I want to say a special hello to all of Alan's listeners in my home state of Arkansas.
It's a tough but a special night on the Alan Colmes Show. We're remembering our friend, Alan Colmes. So interesting to me, folks calling in across the political spectrum, across the nation. Alan, really someone who was able to reach across so many of the divides that we have in this nation. And the friends he left behind are proof of that. Right at the top of the list, Michael Harrison, the publisher of Talkers magazine, truly the father figure of the talk radio business, someone everyone in this industry turns to for guidance and advice. And I'm sure hoping Michael Harrison will help us put Alan Colmes into perspective. Michael, very good of you to spend time with us tonight.
Thanks, Ellis. It's good to be with you, although the circumstances are just, horrible. Alan was one of my best friends. We met back at Hofstra University when we were both a couple of college broadcasters and just starting out. We worked together on the weekends at a local adult contemporary. We called it MOR in those days, stations as DJs. And we've been friends like brothers ever since. So it's a personal loss for me, as well as a devastating loss for the industry and for all the people that certainly know and love Alan. It's been amazing watching the outpouring of love for him from all sides of the political spectrum and from all ends of the broadcasting business.
So in the talk radio firmament that you know so intimately, what makes Alan stand out?
Well, first of all, he was an extraordinarily skilled broadcaster. Very, very funny guy, a bright guy. And in the world of news talk radio, where everything is so polarized, at a time when radio formats and programming is geared toward preaching to the choir, you target an audience and then you preach to them what it is they want to hear. This is what's happened in political talk media, both radio and television. Alan was the only one that I know who was able to maintain a career for years preaching against the choir. Being the liberal at Fox News Channel and being on news talk radio stations where he goes against the grain, arguing his position, arguing his progressive points, and taking heat not just from the conservatives, but from the liberals. I think the liberals beat him up more than the conservatives did. He walked a very lonely and unique path and did so with tremendous skill and never fully understood himself what an amazing job that was.
Now, is that a human characteristic? Is that a technical broadcasting chops? What is it that comes together that let him do that, do you think?
Combination of both. Very good point. It was definitely a human characteristic of Alan. As somebody very close to him over the years, and I knew him back when he was not known in radio. So I knew him when he knew me when. He's a very special guy, a very, very nice man, extremely polite, incredibly intelligent and sharp and witty as heck. And he has ethics and tremendous character. And he brought a lot to the table. He would never go on the air. Even back in the days when he was a DJ playing records, he'd come to the station 4 hours before his show and prepare the songs and get everything ready, and he'd write bits. He was a pioneer in stand-up comedy, which, of course, a lot of people don't realize how funny Alan was. So he had an unusual chemistry as a person. As a very close friend of mine, I found him to be a treasure. And extremely unique. He was an original.
Michael, a few hours ago, I was on WABC with Curtis Sliwa, someone that you know, and was remembering early days of Alan back at WABC and maybe even back to WPIX-FM, early days in our lives in New York radio. And what he was struck by, he had an interesting point. He said that before people knew Alan Colmes as the liberal, as a guy, left-leaning guy in a right-leaning environment, he was a late-night guy and theater of the mind and telling stories and bringing on unexpected guests and throwing them together in ways that no one would predict. And in some ways, really a pioneer of that kind of radio. Is there a line that connects from that into the political Colmes?
That was just opportunity. Alan he always shared with me that feeling that he wishes he could have done generalist radio. As a matter of fact, he was doing a show with me on Talker's experimental platform called Healed Planet, which dealt with his interest in what we called the human consciousness movement, metaphysics, parapsychology. He loved that. He was very influenced by Long John Neville and the great broadcasters of that era when talk radio were generalists. They were interesting people that you listened to because you like to hear their take and quirky view of life, as opposed to them telling you who to vote for and how the government should operate.
And everyone agreeing. Everyone agreeing. Michael Harrison, it's so good of you to spend time with us, give a little perspective on the career of Alan Colmes. Michael Harrison, Talkers Magazine, special edition of the Alan Colmes Show. It's so good to have you here. Ellis Hennigan on the Alan Colmes Show, remembering our friend. John Constantino, show producer, off of the call screening board in the studio with me. John, should we just turn to the callers? Nothing more important, Alan, those callers and listeners.
There's some great callers who've been hanging on for a long time.
Yeah? You want to go to Ron in Hollywood, Florida?
Definitely.
Hey, Ron.
How you doing, guys?
Well,
I really miss our friend Alan, because he gave me a voice on his show, and he introduced me to my hero Chuck Norris, and I will really miss Alan because I got to meet Alan in New York City, and I got to be in the studio and meet all you guys.
Wow, so really is a real personal loss to you. I think a lot of people feel that way, Ron.
Yeah, and I cried 3 times this year. My uncle passed away this last few months ago, and about a year and a half ago, Robin Williams had died, and I cried about that. And now Alan Colmes, I cried about Alan Colmes.
And Ron did come to the studio. We actually, it was a kind of the thing that we chronicled of Ron's trip to New York City to be here for the show. We had him. It wasn't even just a visit. We had him in studio, and we talked to Ron about why he came to New York and what he was coming for. And Ron's been a big part of the show too, because we've chronicled things like your recovery and your relationship with Brenda as well. Yep. So Ron is a big part of the show.
Brenda, say hello.
Yeah.
I just want to say Alan will be greatly missed. He had a big heart, and he was very caring, and he just was great to his callers and everybody. He made everybody a big family. He'll be greatly missed.
Oh, thank you, Brenda. Ron, both of you guys. Seriously, what makes a show like this, what turns it into a family, are the people who are out there who listen, who call, and who open up their own lives. You guys take care. We'll be thinking of you. Oh, boy, there's a lot of that out there.
There's a lot. And, again, it became like a big family. Admittedly, Ron doesn't talk a lot about current events. We get the Ron story, and people would respond to the Ron story. They wanted to know where he's been, if he hasn't called in enough times. So it's part of a big family.
Let's go to Chris in Brooklyn. Chris, you're on with Ellis and John and a whole lot of Alan Colmes friends.
Thank you for sitting Shiva with me tonight.
Sure.
It is about family, Ellis. And John, hi.
Hi.
It's
Chris,
all about family, brother.
Chris is one of the now Ron has been here as a guest, but Chris is one of the few listeners I've actually gone and hung out with because we're from close neighborhoods in Brooklyn. We know the same places. We knew the same schools. So we've had some quality time.
I also had a couple of drinks with Ellis over a long time ago, 10 years ago.
We were both very well behaved.
Absinthe. We drank absinthe together, Ellis.
We were both very well behaved, I'm sure.
We were. It was during the era of George W. Bush. But I got to tell you something. My brother Alan, I love that man. I never met him. I met the two of you, but I love him, and I always will. He's been 12.5% of my life for about a decade now.
Wow.
3 hours every day where I could listen to him. He taught me many things. He taught me the one thing I loved the most about Alan was that every time he was speaking, I could see the smile in his face. And he taught me how to approach a person who is difficult, who disagreed with me on every level, viscerally, and still do it in a friendly manner, in a way that we could both be human beings who could go bowling together, who could be good to each other and understand one another. And tomorrow, when they bury Alan, and it's going to break my heart, I'm going to read a Kaddish for Alan, Baruch Atah Adonai Elohim, Alan Samuel Colmes. He was a great man. I mean, I love radio. Alan loved radio. You love radio. We all understand the theater of the mind. People like me and Al Dopplerson and Dave in Huntington and from Hollywood, Florida, Ron, we are brought together by, there's a single integument in between us, and that is Alan Colmes. And this is a man, I knew for a long time that he was not going to be around for a long time. I had callers call in and complain that I called too much, because I know a moment is something that is in front of you right this second and cannot be replaced. Every day is a gift, and Alan gave us a gift.
Well, those are
and I
very
will love
good
him
words.
For as long as I think about him, and as long as we hold him dear and in our hearts. I mean, it's stupid, it's ridiculous, it's whatever.
Yeah.
This political crap.
Well,
I listened to Sean Hannity tonight and loved the guy. Because me and Sean Hannity are feeling the same thing.
Wasn't that amazing, the people we've gotten across the political spectrum? But I got to tell you, and I really appreciate you checking in with us on a night like this, it really is about that family connection, the callers, the listeners, the friends, and others. Chris in Brooklyn, it's good.
As far as Alan's concerned, next year in Jerusalem, my brother.
All right, my friend. Have a great night. Thank you so much. Let's go to John in El Paso, maybe? Hey, John.
Wow. Thank you so much for letting me be on the show. I appreciate all the time that Alan has talked to me, and I'm going to miss him a lot. And I think that a lot of people don't understand, because of all these people that have been substituting, especially you, Ellis, and all the other people that have been coming on, Barry Weintraub and everybody, never realized, I guess, how difficult it was what Alan did, just taking phone calls and taking them cold and not knowing what people are going to talk about. I think he was a real talent, and I'm going to miss him. And I wonder what's going to happen later now. Who's going to fill his spot, because those shoes are going to be very difficult to take care of.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about it. Those of us who have been, able to try and keep the seat warm for our friends always felt that it was a big duty and not an easy thing, and really appreciate the support of folks like you who kept it going and made it happen.
And John brings up a good point that we, for a long time, up until the end where we were trying to help Alan out a little bit more, we really didn't screen anything. We really didn't. People didn't believe it. That we would, and especially when the guest host would come in and say, how did Alan do that? Did he really not know what these people were going to say? He really didn't know.
He liked not knowing.
He loved it.
He liked not knowing,
loved it.
John.
It would make me crazy,
right.
but he loved it.
He was like, bring it on. You know what? And you might say once in a while, thanks so much for that call and joining us on this night. But John, what some people would find scary, he considered exciting, and he liked the risk of it.
And he didn't even want just a topic or a word, or even just if it said Obama or Trump, it had to be blank. And there were times when I first came back to the show, and I would talk. There we have a screen here. It tells you how long someone's been on hold, or I've been talking to them. And he would say, "So why are you talking to that person for 2 minutes?" I said, "We're actually having just a conversation. It has nothing to do with the screening. We're just having a conversation." And we would have to leave the screen blank. Yeah. That's the way he wanted it.
Yeah, and you know what? Even if they were a little crazy or if they're a little mad, you know what? Bring it on.
It was a bonus. It was a total bonus.
He'll handle it. Daniel in Washington, you jump in here, Daniel.
Yeah, hey there, guys. It's really funny because I've listened to Alan for 4 years, and my fiance called about her aunt having an abortion the last day, And my fiance and I would listen to him when we go to school and everything. And all this whole time, my fiance would say, "Here's the angry white guy coming on." And over the years, I listened to him, and my fiance was just warming up to Alan. He's like, Alan, actually, I like Alan. And it's like he's the last liberal voice that I got to know on the radio. A lot of the people that I grew up listening to, I've been listening to talk radio since I was 7, have either passed away, retired. I used to listen to Dr. Dean Adele, Gene Burns, John Rothman, Bernie Ward.
That's some names.
All these really great radio hosts. And then when I finally found Alan, I was like, I have found my 7 to 10 slot. I now know what I'm going to listen to for 3 hours every night. And I'm not really into the whole public figure and whole celebrity thing, but I'm actually grieving tonight. I actually really feel sorry and sad. And when Al from Al Dahlperson called, that really touched me, and I really feel like a sense of community and belonging here, and it really helps me cope with my everyday life and de-stress. And when I feel alone here in D.C. because I moved here from California, I really don't feel so alone, and I really am going to miss Alan a lot.
Well, that's powerful stuff. I know you're not alone in feeling that way, but it's a very real thing. It's just very kind of you to share that. Seriously, I know those are, genuine emotions for someone you really cared about. Thank you so much.
And one thing he said, when I felt alone in D.C.,
yeah,
people called the show from everywhere. It was stunning to me. People were calling from Australia and Japan and from the United Kingdom, and they made this show a part of their lives in a foreign country. And I had never worked on a radio show like that had this much of an audience from all over the world. I mean, I worked with Alan when it was just New York, and I worked with Alan when it was just the U.S. There was no apps. It was just radio stations in the country. So to have someone call from China or Thailand or from Argentina, it was just mind blowing.
We had that experience even as the news talking about Sweden, and there'd be someone on the phone from Sweden,
and it happened.
And that was legit.
The night of the attacks in Paris, people were calling from France. I mean, it was just amazing to me.
Wow, this is going to be hard for you, won't it?
It is. It's because Alan has been a part of, again, my on-air and off-air life, because I've had so many friends from all these different shows. And honestly, one thing Alan did for me personally is, again, this is the 3rd time I've worked with him, and part of that is because when I either needed work or needed help, he was there for me. When we launched the show in 2003, there was a chance that I wasn't going to be working. And he said, I need a producer, and he called me. I didn't call him. He called me.
Hey, come on
saying,
back,
if do you need some help? And I said, yes, I do. And I was in almost the same situation when I started back here on this show. I needed some help, and he helped me out.
Well, let me tell you, you gave as well as you got. So it was the makings of a genuine partnership. Shall we go out to Seattle and talk to Dre?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Hey, Dre.
Wow. It's an honor and a privilege to be talking right now on the Alan Colmes Show. Chris said it best. He spent a lot of his time, a lot of his life Alan was in my life a lot. He made me feel special. He made me feel a part of. He listened to me. He gave me a voice. He gave me a platform. He educated me. He taught me how to point and counterpoint different people. Alan Colmes was a big part of my life, and this was a sad, sad day. I'm a big radio guy. I'm a radio fan. Even though the radio has switched to a phone and apps, I still listen to the radio through the apps. And wherever I was, I first listened to Alan in Port St. Lucie, Florida, in 2007.
Yeah, well, you can do it from anywhere now, right?
And 10 years later, I'm in Seattle, and I still follow him no matter where. If it's not even in my local market, I've always followed Alan, John. I don't even say my name when I call the show sometimes. I just yell.
They know. Well, Dre, let me say this to you before I let you go. I want you to know that we have one of the true gifts about being here, and in the role that I am, the role that you are, is the diversity of this program. The callers, the ideas, the passion. Doesn't mean anybody gets off easy. But you know what? All God's creatures have been welcome here. Henneken in tonight for Colmes.
This is Barack Obama.
This is Joe Biden.
You're listening to The Alan Colmes Show.
The Alan Colmes Show.
Oh, man, what a 3-hour journey on the Alan Colmes Show. John, when we started tonight, I didn't know we'd be able to fill 3 hours. We could do another 13 hours, I think.
Nothing scares a producer more than the empty plate, and we've had more. It's just been
we got
an outpouring.
Tons of calls, tons of guests. You know, we should reach out to the folks in the control room who have been working so hard on this show, Joe and Josh and Alyssa. And you guys have anything to say? I mean, you've been working with Alan, making this show happen every day. Big change for all of you guys.
I'd like to say I had the honor to work for Alan for the past 2 years, and it's rare in this business you get a chance to work with someone you're actually a fan of. And I love you, Alan. Godspeed.
Oh, God.
You know, for me, it was really nice. I mean, I had a chance to work with him before Joe, and I got 4.5 years, really good time. And, you know, even though he knew I was going away, he still came to my wedding, and I really appreciated that.
And these guys, I worked with both of these guys. I bridged in between these two guys. And the thing is, you're in this room for 3 hours with a dude, you know? You better have some chemistry. You're in a room with no windows, and you can't go out. You could barely go to the bathroom. You have 5 minutes. So you better have a good group of dudes with you to sit next to, because you're riding this thing for 3 hours. And these are two good guys.
Well, top pro. I mean,
good guys.
Because if they didn't know what they're doing, believe me, Alan would be all over their butts.
That's true. And one thing, and I tell these guys too, is I sympathize with these guys, because my second job with Alan was doing their job. So I understand.
And there's a constant turnover. I mean, Alyssa's in here new, right?
6 weeks.
Learning all of a sudden. I mean, gosh.
This is
so weird.
I could not possibly imagine learning a radio show the way that she's learning this radio show right now.
Well, baptism by fire.
Yeah, exactly. When I first worked for Alan, my first 6 weeks were like arranging filing cabinets. I mean, that was pretty much all I did for the first 6 weeks of my learning experience. And then I learned how to screen calls, and then I did the board. So this, I can't even imagine. And she's been awesome, just beyond awesome.
Well, I know she's been a huge help to me, so thank you guys. Listen, it has been, obviously an honor on my part to be in here, particularly in these last weeks. I mean, over the years, we've been in and out of here, and when Alan would go on one of his rare vacations, and Jocelyn would drag him to the Caribbean or something.
Well, we talk about the emails from the beach.
Yeah, exactly.
We would get emails from the beach all the time.
Isn't this guy on vacation?
Exactly.
Isn't he on vacation?
Why does he have more ideas than me? I'm here.
Yeah, but I mean, honestly, there was a certain both power and sadness in recent weeks, as Alan was obviously struggling and battling health issues. But to be in here and feeling like we were carrying on and trying to live up to some of the standards that he had set, and maintaining that thing that so many people, John, have talked about tonight.
And it's not just here on the show. And we've had amazing callers, and people have been sending Facebook messages. The only time outside of talking to Alan's wife that I cried today was Twitter. There was such an outpouring of love from people who work here, and people who don't work here, and people who used to work here, and people who have never worked here, that it was unbelievable. Just the outpouring of love today was incredible.
Yeah. Well, why don't we see, and this goes to all of us and all of you as well, see if we can take at least that part of the Colmes legacy, the idea of talking to people who have different opinions, who come from different backgrounds. Listen, if Alan Colmes of Brooklyn and Long Island, New York, can establish a connection with Reverend Jeffries in Dallas, with Colonel Hunt up in New England, right, with Michael Reagan out in California, and all those people and thousands of others come together on a day like this, John, and say, you know what? I didn't just lose a fellow talking head or a fellow pundit or a fellow public figure. I lost a genuine human friend. Boy, that is something worth emulating, something we could use a whole lot more of in this country of ours. Ellis Hennigan wishing you a very good night, carrying on the tradition of my friend, and for the last time, let me say, it's the Alan Colmes Show.